to this session. My name is Julie Shekroun. I'm a member of the PDC, the Professional Development Committee. Today's workshop is titled Putting the People Together, the Powerful Partnership Between Instructional and Counseling Faculty, presented by Erica Knox, Sarah Nieves Lucas, my apologies if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, Sharon Upstats, a few community guidelines for this session. Please feel free to use the chat box feature, which will be monitored for questions or comments. Participation via video and audio is optional. And if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand in the participants list feature, and our facilitators will take questions towards the end. This session will be recorded for future viewing, and I will now turn over to our presenters.
All right. Well, so hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of you here. It's very exciting as instructional faculty to get a direct line to the counseling faculty so that they can answer a lot of our questions or the questions that students ask us and we don't know the answers to. That's been my experience. And part of the reason why we proposed this workshop is I had a very successful collaboration with counseling. I had a student, a fantastic student, who had been at SMC for a few years, had used up all of her FAFSA, her financial aid for SMC, and was thinking of just graduating with a 2-year degree and going into the work world. And if you don't know me, I'm Sharon Upstats. I teach journalism and media studies. And in journalism, most employers want to see a 4-year degree. So she would really be reducing her job prospects to only get a 2-year degree. And so I was talking with her, and I reached out to the transfer center and I said, you know, this is the student situation. And I learned, which I didn't know this, that there's different financial aid after you transfer. So this student, if after they transfer, there's a whole new pool of money that would be there for her to succeed. And then that would open up more job prospects. And I got really excited about that. And the student is now planning to transfer and is finishing up all the transfer requirements this spring semester. And it just had basically kind of a major impact on her life and her trajectory. And so the goal for those of us who are instructional faculty, our students might ask us questions that we don't know the answers to. And that's where collaborating with the counseling faculty can really make a major difference in students' lives. So personal thank you to Sarah and Erica for helping my student. Really, she's very excited now about her future. And so I turn it over to you. They're going to give a brief presentation about counseling. But then we want to make sure at the end we'll have lots of time for questions for you to ask the counseling department questions that students ask you that you don't know the answer to, and also some discussion about ways we can collaborate in the future. So I turn it over to Sarah and Erica.
Okay, well, I'm so excited to see so many of you here today. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Nieves Lucas. I am currently the interim transfer center faculty lead. But in the next semester, starting next semester, I will be the new counseling department chair. So it's kind of hard for me to say that still, because if you know and you've worked with Lori Guglielmo, she is amazing, and she's been in that position for a very long time. So I'm excited, but I am looking forward to this new opportunity. So I was very happy that Sharon approached me and Erica and I to do this session with her, because I know that there's a lot of conversation usually between the student and the faculty, teaching faculty. And one statistic is that students spend the majority of the time in the classroom. They spend more time in the classroom than they do in counseling. And so usually you are the first point of contact. You are the first person that they look up to. You are the first person that, you know, they'll question, where did you transfer to? And usually we'll get students saying, well, my professor transferred to UCLA, so I want to transfer to UCLA. Or my professor went to UC Santa Barbara and I want to transfer to UC Santa Barbara. So you are very influential when it comes to, you know, our students. So we wanted to make sure that that students, if they had questions and you didn't know where to refer them to, we wanted to give you a little bit more information on, you know, how to refer them to us. As always, you know, we don't expect you to know the transfer requirements or how many units, you know, can the student get an increase of units, right? But it's the important thing is for you to be able to know where to refer our students to. So I'm going to let Erica introduce herself and you know, share a little bit of what she does, and then we'll get started. We'll continue with our presentation.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad we have such a big turnout. Wow, we didn't expect that. So I'm so glad you're all here. My name is Erica Knox, and I am the Transfer Center's completion counselor, or the General Counseling and Transfer Center now. And what I do is I reach out to students in like the non-traditional ways. So I do a lot of email campaigns to students, send a lot of messages through SMC Go and Canvas and things like that. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited. Like they said, we'll be doing a presentation first, a quick one, just to give you an overview on what counseling does. And then we will, this is going to be a lot more about questions and conversation and seeing how we can collaborate and break down those silos that we've been living in. Okay, turn it over to Sara.
Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So who are we? We are a department, a very big department, but we do serve a lot of our students, So right now, we have 34 full-time faculty and 123 adjunct faculty. So, you know, a lot of them are also instructional faculty. Keep in mind that, and we'll show you in the next slide in a minute, you know, what does counseling consist of? What does the department look like? It's not just, you know, general counseling and transfer services. We have other components within counseling that make up this number. The qualifications, as you can see, a lot of our counselors come in from, you know, our counseling, psychology, social work, and other related areas. So when we talk about, we see students and we, you know, the type of services that we provide, we do a lot of different things. And sometimes just like, you know, any student will, you know, will come in and say, I have a question. And usually their question is not necessarily, you know, a simple question or, oh, I just want to know what classes I need to take. And depending on how we start the conversation, we may not even have a conversation about the classes that they need to take because there's so much more going on. And then, you know, one thing too is that counselors have to attend, usually attend between 5 to 10 conferences a year to stay up to date about transfer and policy related information. So we are always trying to get the most up to date information so that we service our students the best we can. Not only are we talking when it comes to transfer, it's not just the local UC, for example. We're learning about the whole UC system, the Cal State system, in-state, out-of-state, international universities. So there's a lot of information that sometimes we need to know in order to best serve our students. So you will see in the next slide, these are all there's 21 programs, including and general counseling and transfer services. Today, our PowerPoint will share with you what we do in general counseling and transfer services, but we'll also give you examples. And I know that I see some of my colleagues in here. You know, if you want to jump in, please do so, because I think it's so important to see what we all do, because we all do things very differently. How we see students in general counseling and transfer center or transfer services may not necessarily be the same way Black Collegian sees their students, or the DREAM program sees their students. So, we do a lot of, we try and help all of our students in all of our services. And that's why you see these special programs on here.
Yes, and so we're going to talk a little bit about how counseling works, what a student would go, their experience would be when they come to see a counselor. So in the General Counseling and Transfer Services Center, that's where we see the majority of the students. So what a student would do is they could, let's say they're going to go through drop-in, which is how we see a lot of our students. They could, if they're doing in person, they would come in, put their name on the list. We have this program called QList, which is really cool. So the student would sign up and they can they could wait for potentially anywhere from 5 minutes to potentially even 2.5 hours when it's really, really busy. So it can get pretty crazy in there. But what's really nice about QList is that students can put their name down, and then we will send them a message and let them know when it's time to come in to see the counselor. Because we are doing obviously a lot of hybrid services right now, when students call in to see a counselor, they again join the QList line and they put their phone number, and then we will call them back. So they don't have to wait for the 2.5 hours there on the line. It's more like a put your name down and we'll call you back kind of thing. So I think it's probably one of the best ways. It's really convenient for students, especially when we have such a long line and long wait. Once the student is it's their time to come in. If we're in person, the student would be greeted by the counselor, and then they're taken back to their office for a one-on-one 20-minute chat about whatever the student wants to talk about. So in general counseling and transfer services, we're really, the student is the driver. We just, they tell us kind of what they want to know or what questions they have, and then we go wherever they take us. So that could be like, I want to make an education plan and plan out my classes. Or it could be something like, I'm struggling in this class, what can I do? Or we'll talk more about all of the services, but it can go in any direction really, depending on what the student needs in that moment. Students are encouraged to come back multiple times to see a counselor. We do have appointments and other ways for them to see us, but many of them will come in for the 20 minutes. And there are quite a few, unfortunately, who do only come in one time to, let's say, plan for one semester in advance. And so this is kind of where the collaboration would come in, you encouraging your students to come and see us. And then obviously vice versa, we always encourage them to go to office hours and things like that. But this is kind of the process. And again, through the General Counseling and Transfer Services Center, we see about 57% of the students that go to counseling.
So if I can
Yes,
add
please.
here, for special programs right now, a lot of our students, okay, good. You're so good, Erica. Okay,
No
I'll let you
worries.
go then. Go ahead.
No worries. So if the student is part of a special program, it's a little different, right? It's really nice if you recommend a student to be part of a special program, that is really going to be a unique experience for them. So a lot of our programs are through appointment only. So it's not as much of a drop-in process. I think there is one or two programs that have drop-in, but most of them will ask you to make an appointment. It's going to be more of a kind of like a case management model, but not a case management model. So they're really keeping track of the students, connecting with them. And in a lot of cases, we recommend students see a counselor in their program if they are part of a program. This is especially true if a student is an international student, for example, because there are unique requirements due to their visa. They have an F1 visa, and so they can only take, or they have to take a certain amount of units, or can only do this, or can only do that because of the legal requirements, right, through the F1 visa. So if a student tells you or you know that a student is part of a special program, always encourage them to go there first. But of course, any student is welcome in the General Counseling and Transfer Services Center. What's really nice about the special programs, in most cases, they have the appointment system throughout the semester. And so there's not that long wait time, right? That 2.5 hour wait. But then during busy seasons or busy times, there can be a little bit of a wait to make that appointment. Some programs, actually like EOPS, they require students to come in 3 times a semester. So very different, right, from general counseling. We might see a student once a semester and they might come in for 20 minutes or quick question. For these special programs, again, that kind of like a case management model, not exactly, but kind of, where it is that like we need to connect with them at least once a semester, and we're making sure that the ed plans are being done and things like that. So it is a really unique experience for them, and something that we always recommend students to do. But again, if they can't take advantage of one of these programs, they can always do general counseling. Do you want to add anything, Sarah?
No,
was
you
gonna-
did awesome.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yes.
was
you're
gonna
good.
add one thing. So I actually have an activity in my class where the students need to find out about some of these special programs, because I did have a student in her last semester who just finally found out about Adelante, and she really could have benefited from being in Adelante like the previous year. And so one nice thing about these special programs, whether it's Black Collegians, Adelante, the Dream Program, Guardian Scholars, EOPS, etc., is that the students get a lot more, like they don't get lost in the shuffle as much, right? And so it's kind of like a supportive community. And so sometimes if I have office hours and I have a student who has a lot of challenges going on at home, and I feel like they could benefit, say, from being in EOPS, I will encourage them specifically to join one of these programs, because then they do get a lot of extra support. It's good for faculty to know about the different programs, because you may notice a student who could really benefit from being in Black Collegians, Adelante. Guardian Scholars are for students who've come out of the foster care system. EOPS is for students from underrepresented groups who often have economic challenges. So here, I'm going to go ahead and mute that person. So it's just something to be aware of, that if you have a student that in office hours that really seems like they need a little bit of extra support, that's what these special programs are there for. And I want to encourage you to think about them.
Thank you, Sharon. I think, you reminded me, I had shared with you earlier, one of the things that when we were in person and we had, I used to do the Spanish language presentations for VIP. And one of the activities that we had them do was it was for the Spanish speaking parents. We're teaching them about the systems of higher education and how their students, the experiences they were going to have at Santa Monica. One of the activities that I would have the parents do was write their student a letter congratulating them for starting college. I would take those letters and then I would hand them over to the Latino Center, and the student would be told, go to the Latino Center to pick up that letter. The student maybe had no clue where the Latino Center was, but it was a good way for them. They were going to find a goodie from their parent, a positive message, but also find another goodie of a student service that the student could possibly take advantage of. So if you do have any type of activities, share them in the chat. I think, Sharon, that is an awesome activity because it does help students. I know that in Counseling 20, they are very good about sharing the resources of, what we offer at Santa Monica College. But I think if we can incorporate that in other topics, that would be a great way for students to reach out to and know what kind of services we provide.
Right, which leads us to the next slide, Sarah.
So, what do we do? And I think Erica talked a little bit about what type of services, and I shared it at the beginning that sometimes students will come in you know, and they will say that they're coming in to talk about this, but we end up talking about everything else. You know, we do educational planning, what classes to take. We talk about transfer, career, anything about, you know, attaining their educational goal. Sometimes we go into mental health. I can tell you, I've had many experiences where I've had to just walk over when we used to have our food pantry, our little food pantries in our offices. All the student was, you know, came in and would say, I'm really hungry and I can't even concentrate in my class. Okay, let's go get you food. Let's, you know, I have a bag here. Let's put some food in there and, you know, come back when you're comfortable, when you're ready to talk, because I want you to eat right now. So again, those are conversations that we have. We talk about housing insecurity, financial aid, and any other resources that the student may need. As you know, GPS is a big thing. And so we also reach out to students that have been referred to us. We talk about transfer strategies and other services that we offer on campus. One of the things that I always say is it takes a whole campus to transfer a student. And having kids, I always say it takes a village, right? Because I'm always relying on different people to help me out with my kids. And it's the same thing I feel with our students, is it takes the whole campus. Not only talking, we always say, talk to the instructor, let them know who you are so that they get to know you. Same thing we do with counseling. The more you come in, the more we get to know you and the goals, that you have in order to achieve them.
So continuing with the services. So in addition to the ones that Sara said, we do a lot more actually, including providing over 100 transfer workshops every semester and student success workshops. So our team puts on quite a few workshops, and we are doing currently a hybrid option. So you can come in person, or you can do the Zoom, and anyone is welcome. Obviously they're catered towards students, but any faculty member or even people off campus come all the time, parents and stuff, people in students in high school. We, in addition to the drop-in services that we offer, we also do a 10-minute max express counseling. So if they have like a very quick question, we see students that way. And like I mentioned earlier, drop-in and counseling by appointment. Again, not all special programs do drop-in or express counseling. So it really varies depending on which which area they're going to go visit. A few other things that we do. So we do the ed planning and the mental health stuff and the GPS stuff, but we also do things like transcript evaluations. So we know as a community college that we'll have students, especially at SMC, we're a global school, right? So we have students from all over the country, all over the world come in and bring in transcripts. And so we talk about transcripts, tell them what applies and what doesn't towards transfer or graduation. We do academic renewal. If a student needs to take a few extra units per semester, we do those. Prerequisite clearances. Some of these words you're probably like, I've never even heard of this term. So we can definitely talk more about this, but we just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what we do. Graduation petitions, transfer applications, reading personal statements. We go through, there are like whole trainings on how to complete a transfer application and how to write a personal statement. It's a little bit different than how you would write an English paper. So this is like part of this is our bread and butter, right? So financial aid applications, and of course, navigating the SMC process. So where to go when you need different things like tutoring or, all the other amazing things we offer.
If I can add to for the services, I had an instructor tell me, if you go back to the previous slide, Erica, and we'll talk about, collaboration, but an instructor approached me about participating in the essay reading that we have it. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit about it, because a lot of the times they will come to you and ask you maybe for a letter of recommendation. And then that's how you know that they're working on their application. So, you know, this is, if you're able to help them and or would like to help them, you know, we offer training, and if you contact us, we'll definitely, if you want to do a one-on-one, we'll definitely do that. But I think, you know, again, it takes a whole campus. And I know that professors have, you know, referred students to me directly, you know, directly to find out. I know, you know, for example, Professor Alejandro Lee, I'm calling you out, Alejandro, but he's very good about, you know, connecting students with me and caring for those students through and through. So, you know, it really is important as you continue, you know, as we continue to close those equity gaps, and those students know that not only does counseling care, but also our, you know, instructional faculty. And, you know, we like to share this screen too, because you saw the numbers, you know, you saw the numbers of how many counselors we have. We have, you know, the 34 full-time counselors. That is still not enough. I think, you know, if we wanted, because everybody is so spread thin, and you are too, counseling is just as, you know, spread thin in trying to provide as many services as possible. So it's still a lot of information that we all have to know. But we all do it because we love seeing the results of our students walking across that stage, or those students coming back and say, I received my bachelor's degree and I never thought that was going to be possible. So, you know, this is why we show you what we do and find ways for us to collaborate. Thanks, Erica. So here, do you want to talk about this one or?
Sure, no problem. As we've been learning, right, about the areas of interest, there was a whole presentation on it and everything. I won't go too much into this, but we are going to have counselors, or we do currently have counselors assigned to certain areas of interest. So we are going to be connecting more and more, hopefully in the future, instructional faculty and counseling faculty. We will create our own little communities within these areas of interest. These are just a few of the counselors that are assigned currently, but as you heard earlier today, there will be 3 more areas of interest to roll out with counselors, and we're unfolding as quickly as we can. But you can see all of the areas of interest on our website. And then you'll have not just one counselor to connect to, but several counselors that you'll be able to go to or to refer students if they need to speak to someone. But always, when in doubt, reach out, because, you know, if you're not even sure who's in charge of what, just call us, or, you know, contact the counselor that you know, and we can definitely refer you.
There's a question in the chat, if you go back, about whether those services are also geared for career education students. And Victoria, I don't know if you mean the area of interest liaisons or just in general. And then there's also, right within counseling, there's also career services, which is part of counseling, and has, I think, dedicated career services counselors for the various areas of interest also. But so Victoria, do you want to say more about what your question is, or are you just wondering if the area of interest liaison?
No, so we have, you know, like in the earth science department, and we have the recycling and resource sustainable technologies. So some of those students are just there for their certificate, and other are transfer students. So for those that are just there for this certificate, can they tap into all of these services as well? And also, how do they petition for, it's always been an issue about petitioning for their certificates. Do they go to you for that?
Yes, yeah. So we are the people that you would send them to petition for certificates or graduation. We'll walk them through that whole process. But yeah, all of our services are open to any SMC student, of course. And then also we have a really nice, robust career center, and they help with so many things. I mean, resumes and cover letters, and looking for, when they're applying for jobs, they can do mock interviews. Or if the student is unsure about, you know, what major to take, we have a whole class dedicated or to like finding a major, but they can always talk to a career counselor. It's really an amazing place that I think sometimes is underutilized. I don't know if they would agree with me, but we're constantly referring students there. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I do have them come in the last day of class and speak to my class,
Oh,
the
cool.
career services counselors, and they're fabulous.
Yes, they are.
And I think this is where, you know, thank you so much, Victoria, for that comment, because this is how we can collaborate is, you know, what else can we do? I think Erica mentioned we've been working in silos for so long, and you know, this is an opportunity to know. And I, you know, one of the first experiences that I heard from instructional faculty was when we came together, when, you know, the Pathways program started to develop, right? And I had an instructor, and we're working together on creating a plan. And she was very surprised to know that, you know, oh, wow, this, you know, you have to take this course before you have to take this other course. And why don't you have them, you know, take it in the fall rather than in the spring? So it started a conversation of understanding what each of us did in our jobs, right? And sometimes there's misconceptions that, oh, you know, counselors aren't, you know, if you don't see us on campus, that means counselors aren't seeing students. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite, because we have been seeing students, you know, we only had like maybe a day or two when the pandemic hit, and we were on there because we knew that our students needed our help. We knew that our students were also experiencing the uncertainty of what was going on. So this is, you know, how can we collaborate? One example, you know, and again, I'm going to call you out, Alejandro, but Alejandro Lee, in the languages asked me, can you come into my classes? Can you talk to my students? And usually we do this in our Counseling 20 classes, but he opened it up for me to come into his Spanish classes. And it was very neat to come in and talk to them, because I don't know if they've ever heard of, you know, where we were, our new student services, as you can see in the background. But it was a great way for me to connect with those students other than our Counseling 20 instructors. You know, one thing Erica has on here, reach out to people versus department. I think that there's a, you know, the warm handoff usually is the best, because, you know, they know, the student will know, I'm going from my instructor to a counselor if I know that counselor, and I know my, you know, my student is going to be safe, but also the student doesn't feel like they have to look everywhere else to connect with a counselor. Like I said, in class presentations, visits, join us in events. One of the things that I was so excited about this year was the opportunity to allow more faculty join us during what we call Transferpalooza, which is the last week of November when students are applying. And we know our students sometimes will wait till the last minute to fill out their application. This past year, I opened it up for all faculty to join us. And it was so exciting to see faculty from, you know, the physics department, kinesiology, of course, the English department, from all different departments to come help read essays for our students who were transferring to the UC system. So I want to continue to do those things so that you see, again, that experience, and you have that experience of not only teaching that student in your classroom, but also helping them move on to the next level of their educational goal. Maria, did you want to share something?
Yes, hi, Sarah. I'm driving, so I'm not turning my camera on. But one of the ways that faculty collaborate with us in the Latino Center when we were on campus, they would literally walk the student, to the Latino Center, and let us know what's going on with the student, their concern, always getting the permission of the student. That was one way. Right now, during the pandemic in this remote world, sending us an email, sending the Latino Center at latinocenter@smc.edu an email when you feel that maybe your student can benefit from services in the Latino Center, and then we will assist them with making a counseling appointment. So those are ways to reach out to us and collaborate with us. You get to know where we are, who we are, and connecting your student with us. And I've had faculty from across different disciplines reaching out to us. And I know that same thing happens with Sherry Bradford with for Black Collegians, where faculty reach out to us when they're concerned. And most of the time we can assist them. And when we can't, we will reach out to other colleagues that can help us to assist that student. I just wanted to share that. Gracias, Sara.
Gracias, Maria. And yes, that's a great example on how, we can continue to collaborate. Erica or Sharon, would you like to add anything else?
I did. I just wanted to say, I think one of the common questions that I get sometimes when students are considering majors are like, what can I do with a major in like philosophy or something like that? And that always gets me really excited because I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. So if you are getting a lot of those types of questions too, of course, our career counselors are going to be a great resource for that. But sending them to us, or we can come to you and talk about that. Like if you're wondering, how does counseling, how do we fit into your class, right? Sara went to talk to a Spanish class about transfer. It works. Trust me, we'll figure out how to blend the two. But one way, like one idea can be talking about how this major or this class is applicable to a lot of different things. I'm sure you have a wealth of knowledge being an expert in your field, but sometimes hearing it from a counselor and the instructor and multiple places is really helpful for students too.
So we wanted to make sure there has been a question mentioned to me in the chat, but I wanted to give Terry the opportunity to ask this question. Terry, if you're here, if you wanted to ask your question.
I'm here. I just wondered, a lot of times it seems like students take a lot of really intense classes together. And so it's just time management is challenging. And I'm just wondering if they're counseled against doing that or recommended that they don't do that. And if we see that, can we reach out to you and have you contact them, or vice versa, them contact you?
Absolutely, Terry. That is a great comment and a great question. We will always look out for the student, and we will always tell them, we don't want you to burn out. Make sure that you balance your schedule out. And of course, students will always say, no, I got to get out. I'm out of here, and then we always have that conversation of, remember, if you take too many classes, what's the worst, thing that you have to do if you have to, if you don't pass the class the first time, having to take it again, right? And so then we tell them, but if you take too little classes, then you're here with us for a minute or two, right? So absolutely, we have those conversations, but also students make their own decisions, right? And so, yes, if a student is struggling and you see and you have that conversation where they're taking a lot of classes that is causing them to burn out or causing them not to do well, definitely reach out to us. And that's where the GPS system comes in, because you can, give us a flag and we can talk to the student. The other thing the other comment that I've had from instructors is, why are you referring students to my class if they're not eligible for my class, right? And a lot of the times we give students options, and sometimes the students will still go and sign up on their own, will still go and take classes because either the class fits their schedule, even though they may not be eligible for it, or it's a hard class. the student can't find any other class and they take it and they say, oh, you know, I'll just deal with it. So there's a lot of different reasons why students take classes when they're not supposed to, or you know, fill up on their classes and they're not supposed to do that. So yes, I think that's a great way to collaborate, is using that GPS system and telling us, helping us, so that we all help the student balance their schedule out. Thank you, Terry. That is a great comment.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Christina. Yes, the instructional comments via flag referrals and GPS is really helpful. And I can tell you, you know, when I was doing counseling, when a student came in and we had, you know, the GPS, and I'd say, well, you know, let's talk about what's going on in your communications class, right? And the student was always surprised, like, wow, my teacher, my instructor contacted you, you know, wow, they really care. And I think those are the, you know, those are some of the things that students like to see, is that we are all working together to make sure that they are successful. So definitely keep using that GPS. Jeremiah, did you have a comment or a question? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm off camera. I really appreciate this presentation and answering all the questions and all the information. It's really helpful. I have, I guess, a question about one of the things that I'm really concerned about is supporting students who find community in things like performing or doing art or theater, or maybe they like playing in the jazz ensemble or something like that, but that doesn't fit into their plan. And it's not going to make it more efficient for them to get out the door. I hold in tension the idea that that is something that they find community with. It's something that elevates their mental health, their emotional well-being, all of that. And I'm wondering, how can we in those should I just say non-STEM areas, or maybe not a part of, you know, the get through the program and get done and get out program pathway, how do we help support or make more central the idea of mental and emotional well-being through the engagement of these other maybe not so core classes? And from an equity standpoint?
That's a really good point, and chime in if you'd like, Erica. You know, one thing that we do tell students, which, you know, falls into this, is especially a student who's looking to transfer to the UC system. As a former UC employee, I always tell students the UC system is looking to admit students from all walks of life, and admit students with all, making sure that the student is has different experiences, not only within their major, but also, you know, in other areas, so that they're able to relate to students from other, you know, from other areas, from other disciplines. So that is how we usually emphasize, especially in how Terry mentioned, you know, helping balance out their schedule. Those are electives that we constantly push, because we know students need to have a good balance. So in terms of, you know, definitely that's a conversation that we have, especially when it comes to mental health. What are ways for you, not only are you doing STEM, but what are ways for you to be able to balance your schedule out and do something fun for you, and still it's transferable, but also helping you become a well-rounded individual. And Erica?
Yeah, I would just add, and maybe Benny can talk a little bit about this, but we have lots of clubs on campus. So if maybe they don't see a club and they're interested in an area, they can start one, and that looks great on their applications. So we try to encourage students to, if you don't see it, let's see if we can make it happen, and then getting a faculty member involved to help out with that. But I hear you. And I think that in the end, like Sara said earlier, we try to provide students with as many options and encourage that exploration. Like that's what it's about, right? To be here is to explore, and that's the purpose, I think, of college. But sometimes, you know, like I keep saying, they're the driver. So we're doing the recommending and everything, and they're the adults and they make the decisions. And so sometimes there's outside pressures to finish in a certain amount of time, or, you know, there's lots of stuff going on at home. And so, but I think that aside from taking classes, is joining or starting a club would be a really good alternative.
I think Mario or Sharon, did you have a comment?
Well, no, I was gonna say, so it goes Mario, Benny, and then Simone.
Okay.
The order.
Go ahead, Mario. And you are still muted. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, I had one comment I wanted to make about my creative writing class, but then the comment that was made, I think by Jeremiah, was, you know, I have for the over 20 years I've been teaching creative writing, I have so many students who take creative writing because they just need a place to put down their feelings, share their feelings with other people in a workshop environment. So always recommend the creative writing courses in the English department. We have several good creative writing instructors there to have wonderful courses. They don't have to go into these courses feeling that they're a seasoned poet or a seasoned writer. They can just go in there, and I know, at least in my class, I can't speak for the others, but in my class, we emphasize a lot journal writing, which everybody will know in the room is just so fundamental with regards to, I think, mental health and just exploring options. How do they feel about where they're going, what they're doing, you know, what their career goals are a lot. And so I get a lot of poems that have a lot to do with, and even stories that have a lot to do with people searching, self-realization, self-actualization, those kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. But this question might be very specific to creative writing, and I probably, if you don't have to answer if you don't want, but I have been giving probably misinformation for over 20 years. You know, 20 years ago, 25, I think I started teaching actually about 23 years ago. They could take 30A twice and 30B twice. And then they dropped that about 12 years ago, and you could take 3 creative writing courses. And then about 8 or 10 years ago, they dropped it down to you could only take 30A once and 30B once. So I thought I was told that you could go to a counselor if you were a creative writing major and they could help you bypass that. Is that true? Am I giving the wrong information?
I think you're just trying to sell your class, but well, there are some circumstances where the student would be able to take the class again, and that's where we do recommend the students to come in and talk to us. It's not a definite no, but also, you know, we want to make sure that because the state of California pays for some of the class that the student is taking, right? So we want to make sure that if the student you know, has passed the class and has the best understanding, then, you know, are they going to learn something new, right? So there's a lot of different reasons. And what I would say is encourage the student to come and see a counselor before saying, yes, absolutely, you're going to be able to take the class again, or no, they're not going to let you do it again. I would say send them to counseling, and then we'll have that conversation, and we'll see. We look at their transcripts and see, you know, if they took the class, how long ago, and there's other things that come into play when allowing students to repeat a class. So no, you're not wrong, but also I would say refer the student to us.
I will do, because the taking let's say an additional 30B or a 30A, it's like staying in therapy. It's like staying in a class, not because you need to learn something new, but because they need that while they're at SMC to keep exploring themselves. And that's the only thing. It's why creative writing is a good course to be able to take again if they can. But do they have to say that they're being creative writing majors in order to take that, to get that waiver, that sort of thing? So thank you. I appreciate it.
So we just officially have 8 minutes left, although, you know, it's up to us if we want to go over, but I want to make sure we have 2 more hands raised, so I want to get to them. And then additionally, if other people have questions, Benny, you were next. Benny, you're muted, so you got to unmute.
I put 3 links in the chat. The most recent one, a list of clubs listed by major. We got them listed based on majors like business. And one of the most active ones over the last few years has been music. So in answer to that question, I put another link in there about how to get involved with AS. It talks about directors, commissioners serving on committees, et cetera, et cetera. The one prior that talks about the upcoming elections. We're going to be having elections in a few weeks for student government positions in the fall. So that gives you all the information about where they can sign up, go to mandatory meetings, and try to get students to get involved. One of the research that UCLA did years ago, they said students who were active on their campus, whether working, involved in clubs, et cetera, tend to do better educationally and career-wise than students who did not. And they feel they get connected to the campus. So those are some of the options we have in AS. So feel free to senior students. We need them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Simone.
Hello, everybody. Hi. I have a question about particularly my discipline. I'm a professor in filmmaking, and we are at the CMD. And I'm trying to figure out a way to collaborate more with the counselor and maybe provide some information to clarify the path that our students can take. Sometimes they come to class and they I've just discovered that we have a filmmaking program that is different from the film studies program, that is different from media. And they didn't know the difference, and apparently nobody told them. And they discovered that their dream to become a director won't be fulfilled if they do film studies where they never touch a camera. So how can I help actually the counselor have all this information and make sure the students can receive this information early on in their academic career?
That's a good, go ahead, Erica. Okay, that's a good, question and comment. And I think, definitely reach out to us if we have the opportunity, to come into your class, but also that is something that we can continue to have a conversation. I know that a lot of our counselors are very good about explaining, just to give you the example of communication, right? A lot of the time students think communication is one thing, but it's completely different at a UC. So those are conversations that we absolutely have with our students. A lot of the time students come in and say, I'm gonna go to UCLA because UCLA is #1 and UCLA is the best and I wanna do business. And so we have that conversation with the student that UCLA doesn't offer business. They don't offer business administration. They offer business economics. And let's talk about the GPA that you need in order to transfer to UCLA under business economics. And then they realize, well, that business economics is not what I want to do. I want to do a different, area. So then we start having a conversation about private institutions or the Cal State system. Same thing with film. One thing that we do try to do, especially in the transfer center, is invite schools that, that offer different types of programs for the student so that they're able to, to get that information so that they know that they're making the best decision in when they're transferring to a UC, a Cal State, and what the differences are within those systems. Because you're right. One thing that's very important that I always tell students is when you transfer, you're practically going in there running. Because you're there and you have to get to know the services, the professor, the area around you. You're excited to be there. And then that's it. That's your whole first year. The second year, you're done. You're getting ready to graduate, looking at grad school, looking for a job, whatever the case may be. 2 years after you transfer go by very fast. It is very important to encourage students to research their major. What is it that they want to do? And what kind of program are they looking for?
So
And
Sarah,
so-
I think
Uh-huh.
more specifically what he's, so like the career education programs at SMC. So like film production is a career ed program
Right,
at SMC, and some might be transferring and some might not be transferring. But it's very different film production from film studies.
Mhm.
And so for the career ed programs, including film production, how can we make sure that the counselors have all the information that they need about the career ed programs,
Mhm.
so that if a student comes in and says, I want to be a director, the counselor just doesn't only talk to them about where they want to transfer to do film directing, but also make sure that they know that there are film directing, film production program. Like, is there a point person that we should be sending this career ed info to? Or is,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
that's where, no, and I'm so glad that you're saying that. That's where our collaboration comes in. So if we maybe, and that's something that we can start having a conversation. Does it come through the department chairs, or do we, or are you okay with me saying, okay, student, I know this is what you want to do. I know a great instructor that you can connect with. Are you okay with us sharing your email to that student so that that student is able to connect with you? I think these are the type of collaborations that we need to start having, because like Simone said, we want to make sure that the student understands which route they should be taking if they want to become a film director.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we need, I think that we need to clarify a few things, but thank you.
Yes,
Fantastic.
and
So
Heather, yes, I did get your message.
officially we are out of time, but I'm willing to stick around if people have more questions. I don't know, Sarah and Erica, are you able to stick around a couple more minutes?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. For those that have to leave, thank you very much for joining us. We hope that you were able to learn something, but let's connect. That's the whole point, is for us to connect so that we can help our students achieve their goals. Thank you so much. Julie, did you?
I just wanted to thank everyone. Obviously, you can all stay, and remind everyone that there will be a survey that you'll receive to be able to provide feedback on the events today. And so thank you all. But again, you can all stick around if you want to.
So I wanted to touch upon really quick on a comment or the question that Heather sent me. So when grading, I have a student on the cusp between a D or an F. Which is better in terms of transcript and transfer? So the F so that they can repeat, and does it clear the F, or a D for a little better in terms of a GPA? So when it comes to a student, if they receive a D or an F, the student can repeat the class. They cannot repeat a class that's a C or better, okay? So a D or an F can be repeated.
So a D can?
Yes, a D can be repeated. Now, one thing that we do tell students is that if the student is transferring to the Cal State or the UC, if they repeat the D or the F, our transcript will reflect the repeat. So the student will get the higher grade. The UC system and the Cal State system, as long as they retook it, for the Cal State, as long as they retook it at our campus, they will give them the higher grade, and the first F will not be counted, or the D. So again, the higher grade will always be counted, and a D or an F can be repeated.
That's great to know, because I'm just handing out Fs thinking that, well, at least they can repeat.
Yes, no, the D or the F. Now, one thing I do tell students is if they get a D or an F, in that moment when they get that grade, their GPA is going to go down. And they have that understanding, right? Like, oh my goodness, my GPA is going down. But we always remind them that once they repeat that class, the university will take the higher grade. Now, that's very different for private institutions. USC will average the grades out. So that's where we want to be careful and have those conversations with those students. And that's what I do when I go into the classrooms and say, C's will keep you at a 2.0, and the minute you get a D or an F, Now we're talking about probation, right? Now we're talking about other issues. But for the UC and Cal State, the D or the F is repeatable and they will take the higher grade, where private institutions in the example of USC will average them out. So that's where we tell students, be careful with that.
Does a
Okay.
W count the same as an
A
F?
W, and that's one thing I always tell, W's will not affect your GPA. Be careful with W's in that, you know, if you have a lot of W's on a transcript, the UCs will ask for an explanation. And so it's not going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt them, but we do ask them to explain those W's. USC doesn't like to see a lot of W's because, again, they want to see that the student has been consistent in going to classes and they're going full time. And, you know, so in some cases we ask them to be careful, but for the public institutions, not a problem. It will not affect their GPA. Yes,
Okay.
Nilofar?
First of all, congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well, the grade is really matter for financial aid. Just keep in mind,
Yes.
W impact the students' financial aid. And this is a great conversation to have the financial aid, the part of the class and the faculty, because we are counting the W and it's gonna hurt the students for lowering the completion rate. And this is gonna go to the probation and suspension.
Thank you. Erica.
Yeah, I thank you for pointing that out, because I think that's the important piece of connecting a student with a counselor, because every student has a slightly different situation. And so we do calculations and we see, okay, if you get a W, this is what might happen. And if you get a D or an F, this is what could happen. And so we go through the different scenarios with students in our appointments or in our sessions. And so if you feel like a student is somewhere, you know, they've asked you, what should I do? Definitely say, these are the options in my class, right? Obviously, and then let's connect with a counselor, because you guys can then do the calculations and see if a W would benefit you more, or if a D would benefit you more, and you know, like whatever all of your options, or the C, right? Let's say they're borderline and they're like, should I get the C or the W? Those are the conversations that we're having all the time. And I think it really depends on the student's goals. It depends on the student's financial aid situation. It depends on their, like, so many things. And so that's where we get to unpack all of that. So then kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of you guys, I think.
Well, the other thing is faculty, we don't realize, is if they get a C in a class that's in their major, right, they don't get credit for that class because it's one of their major classes.
It just depends on what the institution is looking for. So for example, UC Santa Barbara for business economics, they're looking for a B or higher in micro and macro. A student who has a C, you know, may not meet those requirements. So a C is still transferable, a D is still transferable. It does affect their GPA, but in terms of grading, a C will still fulfill their requirements, but some schools will require a specific grade for that particular major. Heather.
Just since I'm here, just to follow up from that other part of the email about, like, you know, sometimes I don't know where to send a student to. So when in doubt, where do I send them? Like, I have a student right now who I always give extensions on my, like, I have asynchronous, completely flexible. Their tests, they can take an entire week to take their tests, and they're all open, no open book. So I feel like I'm as flexible as I can be, but it's sometimes even that is just not enough. But the one area where, like, I toe it is the discussion threads, because it's only 4 out of, it's like 2 points to respond immediately, and then another 2 points to respond to a colleague. So if they don't respond to a classmate, then they miss those 2 points. It's 2 out of 500, but they panic about those 2 points, especially my scholars students. And yeah, and so I had this student, she missed her 2 points, and I'm like, I don't reopen discussion threads. It's like entering a conversation after everyone's left the room. It's just weird. So, but it's 2 points, don't sweat it. And she started telling me about her pipes are bursting and the waste is coming up through the bathtub. And I thought, okay, this is weighing on her because there's so much else weighing on her. So I said, you know, I can see that you tried. I can see that you had tried to cut in. I'm going to go ahead and give you the 2 points, the credit. But in the meantime, she's on my mind today. And like, I don't know where to send her. I don't know. I think she needs some help. Like, I think she's got a lot on her. When in doubt, where do you send? I know it's a long example, but it's today.
And I think, you know, everybody will have a different answer. I would say if you're like, okay, let's get you something right now, start out with general counseling and transfer services. But I know that if you use like GPS, you can also refer them to the wellness center. But that's where we also start having those discussions at, you know, in counseling. If you know that they're not part of a special program, you know, send them to us, and then we can start looking into, okay, what's going on. Know. Right. And that's okay. You know, start out with us, you know, and we can have that conversation so that we know where to refer them to.
All right. I'm going to send an email later.
Yes.
Her name is Franny. She's great.
I don't know if anybody, I mean, a lot of teachers do this where you'll do like an information sheet at the beginning of the semester wanting to know about your student. I would recommend putting on there, are you part of a special program? And if they are, then you can kind of have that in the back of your mind or dig through that sheet and then refer them specifically to that program.
Yes, it's a good, I do a pre-course equity survey where I ask them about like internet connection, devices you're using. Is this your first time? Have you been away from school? And what else do you think I might need to know to be a better professor for you? And I'll usually get comments about like, I've got kids or I've got 2 jobs and I, you know, and then when they're reaching out to me, I can go back to that and think, okay, this is what's going on with this person, or at the very least entry level, this is what I know. At the very basic. But yeah, I haven't put that. That is a good idea. I'll put that in the survey. Like, are you part of any special programs, or can I help connect you to those programs? Are you interested?
Yeah. Yes. And I'll put the link in the chat for where you can find all the special programs, and you can find the contact info for that too.
Okay. Thank you.
Do students know what you mean when you say special programs?
Usually they do, because it's, you know, there's specialized programs for like a student population. And even though any student can participate in those special programs, and that's why we provide, I think Erica's going to provide the link, but that's something that you can add. You know, you're not sure what that means. Look at the, you know, this is a link, go on there and see what I mean by a special program. And again, when in doubt, because we do see, you know, in general counseling, we see the 57% of the student population, we will then know, okay, yes, you're part of a special program, or no, you're not, and we'll help you. But definitely, you know, that's the whole point. When in doubt, just refer them to us, and then we can go from there.
And Lori raised a point in the chat, and I think we don't publicize this enough anymore, that we have the care and prevention team that's for like emergency situations. So like, if you have I had a student who's on the verge of homelessness, right, and was getting kicked out of their house. And so like there is a care and prevention team referral that's for like emergency type cases, which maybe for the student Heather was, that gets like eyes on it right away. And I think that maybe I also think like we don't always remember it, but I'm sure new faculty need to know about it too. Lori, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'll try to put the link in the chat, but it's a really good resource. And for students that are facing food insecurity or homelessness, or, you know, any kind of immediate life issues like that, we can, instructors can refer them to the care and prevention team. And we now have a full basic needs. We have several basic needs counselors and a basic needs coordinator. And those individuals will work with students that are in immediate need.
Great. Lori. And Betty, you had put in the chat, and this reminds me that I'm going to to our department about this, but departments can do presentations during the counseling meetings. Like they could do like a quick presentation about the special programs in your department. And so Common Media Studies will put one together and follow up. But I wish I had remembered to mention that while everyone was here, but
Yeah.
it's almost like we need a follow-up email about the things that we talked about and sending it to faculty all.
Yeah.
I see that Daniel has their hand up.
And I think,
I'm just waving.
and Daniel is
right here.
another one of those instructors that just is so invested in their students. And I'm not saying you all are not, right? But those have been my experiences with specific instructors on how much you all care for that student. And again, I want to remind you that they spend more time with you all than they do with us. And so when they come to see us, we try and, come on, come back in, let's meet with you again, where they're going to be in your class a lot longer. So this is important to know and how, again, we can continue to work together. Yes, Benny.
Yes, I just want to follow up on that. The counselors, we learn a lot when we get those department presentations. And one professor from the film department put together a really good document. It was a few pages long, talking about transferring to film school, talk about other programs in the department. And that's something also you can do. You can put a detailed analysis of the different programs in your department, recommendations and whatever. And I had that document for a while, but it was really good. And it was a go-to good document for me. And also when our counselor from the music department, Robin Ramsey, I can't remember that, I'm tripping. But Robin put together a really detailed music document while she was on her, doing her sabbatical. And it was a go-to document. It was very detailed about every major you can think of associated with music. So those are some of the things you can also do to assist. Thank you.
So it's good to know that those guides exist, and maybe it's a matter of tracking those down and updating them if they need to be updated. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And if you prepare a document on Department of Discipline programs to share with counselors, run it by Estella Nari first. That sounds important.
Any other questions or comments?
Goodness.
Otherwise, thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you. Hopefully this was
Thank
helpful, but I
you.
agree with you, Sharon. I think we can have a conversation for hours on end.
I know, we were worried, we're like, what if nobody comes because it's the end of the day? We had like questions prepared to ask.
This was really good. This was really good.
Yeah, it's really good to understand all those intricacies of what the student is going through.
Yeah.
Thank you for providing this.
No,
Thank you all for
And
coming.
remember, we're all
Yeah.
in this together.
Yes.
This is for the
Thank you.
students, so thank you.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Good night.
All
Thank
right,
you.
bye-bye.